Hi, Stephen here for the Idiot Quilter, and here's another interview in my series of interviews with subscribers. Enjoy. Okay, hello everybody. It's Stephen for the Idiot Quilter, once again with a really great interview with a very creative and talented person who's also has her husband along with her. So we're going to do two interviews at the same time here because I have a feeling this is a partnership for your website. But we're going to get into talking all about that in a few minutes. But right off the bat, I want to make sure I'm saying your first name correctly. It's Marnae.
Yes.
Great, I got it right. Okay. And as I said, they come from the YouTube channel Farmhouse, Country Farmhouse. And we'll talk about that in a few minutes. But right off the bat, where are you folks located?
Go ahead.
We are in the lower part of New York in a little area called Lindley. So it's
Okay.
kind of like a farm country here.
South
Okay.
Central New York.
Yeah.
Oh, all right. So you're not all that far from me because I'm in Southern Ontario in around the Toronto area. So you're just south of us by probably only about a couple of 100 miles, uh, if that. So that's interesting. So is the weather, how's the weather there?
It's been getting better. We had a cold spell there for a little bit. It was down almost -10 or so for a bit, but we're back up into the 30s and 40s. So
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think your temperatures are very similar to ours because that's what we've been going through as well. Well, spring's around the corner, I hope. So, Marnie, how long have you been quilting?
Probably over 10 years. I'm gonna say about 12 to 13 years when I actually got into it. What got me into sewing in general was I had a friend that would crochet and I asked her to teach me how to do it. And she's like, she didn't know she could teach me, but she could show me. So I started off crocheting and then I kind of weaseled my way into like crocheting fabric rugs. So I would go to thrift stores and buy fabric and I would cut it up into strips and I would sew the ends together and start crocheting. So that's kind of where I started off with this thing. And then my mom came along to me one day and she had brought me a tote. And my mom has always been a sewist, but she worked in a factory. She used to make women's underwear in a factory for I don't know how many years, but she knew a lot about sewing machines. But I just never had anybody to really teach me, so I've kind of taught myself a lot of things. But she kind of motivated me to when she brought me this tote that she had made, and she showed me how to make it. That's where I took off into something and I made several and I kind of put my own spin on them. I put ruffles on them and decorated them with different fabrics and then I got bored with it and I'm like I want to do something else. So I kind of went into well, I made my first quilt and it was kind of like a crazy quilt in like controlled 9-inch blocks. And before I even got the thing together, I was out with my mom's cousin one night and I showed her the blocks that I was making. And I was so proud of myself. And she looks at me and she's like, I want to buy it. And I'm like, well, it's not done yet. She's like, I don't care. She said, I'm a quilt collector. She said, when you get done with it, she said, it's your first quilt. I want to buy it. So I finished it and she bought it. She bought it from me for $100, and I didn't know really much of anything. And I didn't have a quilter. I hand tied it then. And then I went on to making other quilts and I've kind of like tried to machine quilt them, but that's really tricky and hard to do. But the
Yep.
first one I did for myself, I still have it. It's my favorite. And
Well,
I call it perfectly perfect.
I think your first is always your favorite, isn't it? With that,
Yeah, yeah.
her
a lot of things in life.
her favorite is whatever one she's working on right now. Let's just be
Well,
honest.
yeah,
They're all my
yeah.
favorites.
Yeah, very true. I understand that. Well, you've already kind of told me about how you got started, but did you, and you mentioned your mother was working making ladies' undergarments and was a sewist as well. So was there anybody else in your family that did quilting or that encouraged you?
No, my remember my grandmother when I was little, she had taught me how to do the basics with a needle and thread, but I ain't no hand sewer. But my grandmother sewed out of necessity, and she did rag rugs as well. But I think she braided them and sewed them, and I'm like, wasn't into that. I just crocheted them. But yeah, my grandmothers were necessity sewers, and I think some sewing is something I've always wanted to do, even in my younger years, I just didn't know how to approach it. I didn't know nothing about a sewing machine, and I finally just went and bought a sewing machine, and I started off with a Singer Simple. And then of course I wanted something a little more advanced like my mom had when she showed me the tote that she'd made, and I started sewing those. So I went to this little sewing machine shop, and I intended on buying a nice used machine, a Janome actually, and they didn't have any used machines, and I bought one of their floor models, and I swear to God, I think I was hyperventilating thinking I'm buying this sewing machine, and it was so much money, and I'd never spent that much money on myself before. But let me tell you, after I got it home, I first thing I did, trying to play with it and figure out buttons and stuff, I jammed it up. I just about cried because I thought, oh my God, I broke it. It was a $500 machine, and I got it untangled, and it's been the best sewing machine ever. I still have it. I still sew on it. Yeah, I kind of grew from there. Yeah, it's become an obsession.
Yes, yes, it is. Believe me, because you've been quilting longer than I have. I've been quilting for about 5 years and had no desire to know anything about sewing machines or anything like that. And I bought my first sewing machine on a whim because I was a crafter. Thought I could, sew paper with it or do something at Costco, $180, brother, 50
Wow.
decorative stitches. And then I broke it. Well, it fell apart. I hadn't used it very long. It was cheap. It was cheap. And
Yeah.
I made my first quilt on that, and that got me kind of hooked. And so, yeah, the rest is history, right? You start acquiring sewing machines and all the other stuff. So, James,
It's amazing.
yeah,
Mhm.
it is. So, James, just ask you, do you do any kind of sewing or quilting?
So I do most of the long arming. She does all of the piece working.
Okay, so
And
are you running a
what's that?
long arm business? Are you running a long arm business? Do you
Yes.
arm other
Yes.
people? Well, that's
That's
Yeah.
what I've grown into.
yeah, okay. We're going to come back to that in a second because I really want to know more about that. But do you have a favorite creation? Now, we just talked about the fact that probably your favorite creation is the one you're currently working on. And I see you've got something very nice behind you, and it's got a
I do. This is probably my most prizeful creation. I created this last year, and I entered it into my first quilt show. It was the Corning Quilting Guild I belonged to, and it was everybody that came into the quilt show got to vote on their favorite quilt. Mine came into second place.
wow.
Believe me, I was ecstatic to even, to take any kind of ribbon. I would have been happy, but it makes me feel validated as a quilter, and I know there's a lot of people out there been quilting a lot longer than I am, and are perfect on seams and all that stuff. But yeah, it's kind of a real thing,
Oh, yeah.
when
Oh, yeah.
you're validated. Yeah, this was created out of a Lori Holt book, and I put a lot of different fabrics in it, like velvet. The little hat on the girl in the truck has a pleather hat. The bee on the truck has some chenille in it, and it was all made of scrap fabrics that I had. I didn't buy anything special for it, so it has a lot of different fabrics in it, and it was all pieced.
Well,
So it was really
I
fun.
well,
quilted it.
and you
It
quilted
was my quilting that's what took second place.
that okay, a little competition here going on, but it's a beautiful quilt, and I mean the thrill of winning a prize, and that was the first one
Yeah.
you ever entered in a show.
It was the first time I'd ever entered in anything, as far as sewing, and just I was
Was it?
ecstatic. I think I was jumping up and down because I found out on Facebook because I'd missed the meeting that they had when they presented, all of the winners in the quilt show, and I wasn't there, and I found out, and I'm jumping up and down in my living room, and I just couldn't believe it, that I felt like I'm good enough. I'm good enough.
Yeah.
So
Oh, I know. I've never had that feeling because I've never entered in a show with it, but I can imagine what it would really feel like. And it is a beautiful quilt. The quilting is very, very nice on it. Very much enhances it as well. So
yeah.
let's talk a little bit about your style as a quilter, and then I want to talk a little bit with you, James, about your actual long arming as well. So how would you describe yourself if you had to label yourself as a quilter? Would you call yourself traditional, modern, uh, free form, experimental? I think there's a little element of experimental because you're talking about the different
I
fabrics.
definitely feel like I'm a free form and experimental because I am more visual on a lot of things. I have a very hard time with patterns and reading patterns. Although when I do the Lori Holt piecing books, those are very fun for me because I can understand them and I can put them together. But normal patterns for some things, I really have to study it, or I've relied on YouTube from other people to teach me, and that's where a lot of my teachings have come from is other people, you know. But I when I see something, I'm like, I can do that, you know. So I just
Well,
kind of do a lot of
what she's
drawing.
really notorious for is she'll see a block and she builds a whole quilt around that block. Like this one was the truck. She saw that truck in the Lori Holt book. And then from there, she had to add flowers. And on the bottom of it, there's all kinds of other
Oh yeah, there's a goat, there's
10,
watering
10-inch
can.
patches or 10,
Yeah, there's
10-inch square patches and
there's
stuff.
all kinds of fun stuff in there,
So
but
she usually starts off with one idea and then it just explodes from
yeah,
there.
I have
Yep.
to get creative with stuff. I like to put my own spin on things. I'm not a cookie cutter, you know, copycat like other people do. Like I have a friend, she wants it just like the pattern, you know. Me,
Same
I'm like,
color, same everything.
to me,
Yeah,
it's a blank space of like, what can I do with this?
I know, and I know exactly what you mean about the cookie cutter kind of thing, because you know, you go into a quilt store, they've got quilts showing what classes are coming up, and there's always someone in the store who says, I want to make that quilt and I want those fabrics. And of course, the samples
Yeah,
are
yeah,
made months before, you know, and that fabric may not exist anymore, you know. Fabric
right,
has a bit
right.
of a life to it. And oh, they get so upset because they want exactly that quilt. And I'm more like you. I look at the pattern and I decide, okay, I like this element. I like that element. I'm not so sure about that element. So let's play around with it. I mean, that's the beauty of quilting, isn't it? It channels in
Yeah,
our
yeah. I like to
creative,
choose my own colors
yeah,
and put my own creativity on it to kind of stamp it as a one of a kind kind of thing. You know, I don't want to
exactly.
be like everybody else.
Yeah, I know that exactly. I understand that completely. So I'm just going to ask James in a second here about the long arm quilting, but do you do any long arm quilting?
He usually sets everything up. I have a hard time loading everything, but once he gets the quilt loaded, I just run with it. I can keep it up, quilting it and rolling it and all that. So
So
we
the
We
two
kind
of
of
you.
do a team.
Okay.
Well, we have a automated gamble. So once I get it all set up and programmed and stuff, she watches it as it's going
Going
through the rolls and does the rolling.
right. So you're going using the computerized part of it more so than doing free motion with your long arm.
Yes.
Okay, I
Yes.
admire you for that. You know why? People will turn around. I have a long arm as well, and I have a computerized system to it. And people will turn around and say, well, that's cheating. And I go, no, it's not. It's the 21st century way of quilting. You know, it takes some knowledge and some creativity. You know, yeah, sure, the computer's going to do it, but you've got to set it up and you've got to pick the design and all kinds of other things. So, yeah, the heck with free motion. I'm not good at it. That's why I
Well, I
got
mean,
the
you run
computer.
into all the
And
glitches of people's quilts. Some of them aren't as perfect as others, you know, and there's
yeah,
fullness and there's waviness, there's wonkiness, there's
Yeah,
loose seams. I mean, we've seen it all, you know. I mean, it's scary, especially
yeah.
when it's somebody else's quilt, you know. I mean,
but then on the same token too, like I don't want to discourage anybody from getting a quilt quilted, even if it's your first one and it is wonky and it's wavy and oh my God, the seams are
exactly.
horrible. Get it quilted because I'm
Everybody
telling
has to
you,
start
it
somewhere.
finishes the
And you
Exactly.
quilt.
keep going, get better. And I felt like that, you know, and I've influenced a lot of others to sewing. I've influenced my ex-landlord. She's one of my best friends now, who said she would not ever touch a sewing machine. She bought one day and she's like, Marnie, I bought a sewing machine. Teach me how to use it. And I'm like, I'm so happy, you know. And then his mom, you know, who told me that she was allergic to a sewing machine. I had her make a quilt with me and she's addicted. You should see some of the things that she's building now. My little sister, she lives here at the house with me, and I've gotten her quilting, and she didn't start off so good either. And she's like, "Well, it's not that good." I was like, "You keep going, and you'll get better." Just like my friend Brenda, you know, she first made something, she's like, "Oh, this isn't very good. I'm going to throw that away." And I'm like, "No, you're not." I said, "You're going to keep that." I said, "Because you're going to look back on that, and you're going to see how far you've come, you know, and how far
That's
you've
what I was going to
progressed."
say. Exactly. You need to
You know,
see.
I mean, it's amazing. I've seen my journey because I just pulled out a quilt out of a tote here last week, and it was my second quilt top I'd ever made, but I never finished sewing the rows together. I sewed the rows together and I hung it up, and I actually did a YouTube video on it because I'm like, I can't believe I made that, and I was just a beginner, and it's not perfect, but it lays really nice, and I can't wait to get it quilted. So I've kind of seen my own journey um,
Yeah,
as I've come along.
and that's what's new people coming into quilting, or people who think they might want to get into quilting, but they're intimidated by it because they see all these perfect quilts, the prize winners, the whole bit, YouTube
Yeah,
channels
yeah,
that don't show you the mistakes and how to get over them. That's why I started my
Well,
channel, because I make mistakes.
yeah,
and that's
yeah.
something that I was just talking to her about the other day. YouTube doesn't ever show the mistakes.
That's right.
Out in the shop, I've got a YouTube video that I do stuff out there, or a YouTube channel that I do stuff out in the shop with, and I don't show all my blunders. No, like I make a mistake and I delete that video, do it right the next time, and show that one.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, yeah. I
yeah,
think it's a
if
learning
if
thing.
you
It's
want to get
definitely
started in quilting,
yeah.
yeah, if somebody
Go
wants to
for
get
it.
started in quilting, do it.
It's addicting. It's
It is.
fun,
Yeah.
and I say to hell with the perfection. I mean,
Yeah.
it is fun. It's relaxing. It gives your mind and your hands something to do, and you get better as you go along.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, it's supposed to be fun. It's only fabric
Mhm.
and thread,
It's only fabric, it's only thread.
Yep.
yeah,
I love
like,
that from the quilting green.
yeah,
He does
it's a
that, that's
quilting
a great
green.
saying.
Yeah. And he'll tell you what he makes his mistakes. And I mean, that man,
Yeah,
I watch his videos, he breaks all
I've
the
watched him too.
rules and he comes up with something great. So, it's a
Yeah,
very freeing thing. Don't let it hold you down. Just go for it. So I want to go back though
yeah.
to the whole long arming thing, or long arming. That's what I meant. Um, how what made you decide you wanted a long arm? Did you immediately want one of those as soon as you got into quilting,
Mm,
or
No, so actually, when I met Marnae, she had the Janome and I think a
and I bought
Singer
a brother.
or a brother
I bought a
machine.
brother. So I had
Um,
those 2 machines.
and shortly after she moved in with us, or moved in with me, um, we had a little 10 by 10 room that we set up as her sewing room, and she had mentioned that she wanted, or your friend had a long arm for sale,
Yeah, Brenda,
a
her
friend's
friend,
friend, yeah.
yeah, a friend of a friend had a long arm for sale.
So I think we gave
800, yeah,
$800
it was
for it.
$800.
And
whoa,
it was just a
okay.
mid-arm machine. It was like a Graco frame. I mean, there was not much to it. It was bigger than the room was, but the nice thing is that particular model you could cut in half.
We shortened it down so
So
we could do small quilts
yeah,
on it, and little
Right.
runners and things, something for us to play with.
and
So
so that's kind of how we got started. And we were just quilting her stuff and mom stuff and
yeah,
little stuff that we could do. Then we bought the farmhouse and we were able to set up the whole machine. And I did a couple of quilts on it, but there was something about that machine I could not get it to run right. And I was constantly running into issues with nesting on the bottom of the quilts, tearing out entire rows. And I mean, I was
yeah, we
getting
did a couple of the last quilt we did on it was for my niece for her graduation. And we were really frustrated because we kept having to take out rows and it was just making a mess.
I finally looked at Marnae and I said, this thing's gone this weekend. I said, get it out of the house. And that day I went down, jumped online and started looking at professional quality machines, and
Right.
did a lot of research on a
We
lot of
did.
different ones. And I finally landed on the Gamel,
Yeah.
and I've got zero regrets about it.
Yeah. The Gamel is pretty much the standard, I'd say, in long arms. I have an APQS.
Yep.
But yeah, but I know what you mean about the frustration of them and the whole bit. There is a learning curve. You just don't slap one of those suckers together and figure you're going to quilt, till the cows come home, kind of a thing. Nope, you got to learn it. But I find that challenging, but I enjoy that, the learning process. And with every quilt I do on my long arm, and I'm sure you have found the same on yours, you learn something new
Oh
about.
yeah, there's 100 ways to load a quilt. I mean, and not
Yeah, we've
just
watched a lot of other people.
and looking at the quilt before you load it kind of determines how you're gonna load it, because maybe you got a little fullness here that you got to deal with, or maybe you got the quilt's not square, whatever the case may be. Or of course the back's never big enough, it seems like.
Yeah,
I
I've been
know.
guilty
It
of that too.
doesn't matter how much you measure and you allow, for the extra over it and the whole bit. I always keep coming too close to the edge. I don't know what this is with it.
Oh,
So
clients are the same way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you've got a lot of interesting stories. Well, we won't get into now, but you know, people. The reason when I first got my long arm, the first thing that came out of people's mouths, "Oh, you're going to start a business." And I'm like, "No." Well, why did you get a long arm? I said, "For me, because I hate trying to quilt on a domestic machine, you know, and
Yeah.
it's for me." Well, you could rent it out. No, no one's touching my long arm. It's just my machine. I'm not doing anything for anybody. Now, having said that, that was at a stage when I've only had my long arm for just over a year, kind of a thing. But that was at the stage where I wasn't really sure what I was doing. I have more confidence now. I would maybe for a friend quilt it, you know, use it for that, but I would never open it as a business because when people bring you their quilts, as you probably know, you're busily away, the machine's working on its quilting, and suddenly a seam opens up. Or, you know, or suddenly you find that the borders are sort of going wonky on you and that kind of thing. So
Yeah.
I'm sure you've had experiences with that as
Mhm.
well. It's not as easy as people think who, you know,
It's
don't have
not.
these.
Especially when somebody else's hard work and quilt, I've really sweated over the and I'm like, "Oh my God, what do we do?"
I,
You know?
I remember we had one, it was a white on white quilt. And I mean, it was just gorgeous. And I was so scared with that much white fabric all over the place. I'm like, oh my God, a drop of oil or anything touches this quilt, and I'm like panic mode,
Yes.
And
See, I would be the same way. That's why I don't do them for other people because, you know, it's one thing to screw up your own quilt. It's a different thing to screw up somebody else's. And especially if that person's paying you on top of it,
Yeah,
you want it to
exactly.
be perfect. So, um, so let's talk about your work area. You know, where you do your sewing, where you do your long arming. Do you have like a big space for both of those? You'd have to have fairly big space for the long arm.
well, so her sewing room is 15 by 30.
That's a good
Um,
size.
yeah,
This is a
it's
big room.
Yeah.
when we were looking at the house, we walked into this particular room, and they use it as a master bedroom. The old owners did, and Marnae's looking around, and I can see she's trying to figure out like where the bed's gonna go and stuff. And I
I
looked
was
at
just
her, and
taking
I'm
the
like,
room.
"This looks like a sewing room to me."
I think my
And
mouth
her
fell open.
eyes went.
Considering I didn't even have half the size of this room in our old house, and then when he talked about this room becoming a sewing room, I'm like, oh my, it just opened up a world of stuff. Well, since
Buy
we
the
moved
house.
into this house, a lot of things have evolved in this room. I mean, I've done uh 2 tours of the sewing room, and then of course we just did the upcycle of a new desk. So it's really evolved a lot in here. The best thing that Jim has done is put in the cupboards and the long counter so I could set up
Wait,
almost every one of my sewing machines.
I can kind of take you around if you want to take a look.
Actually, sure, that would be great.
Yeah.
So we're on our laptop, so you got to kind of forgive the.
That's okay. Oh, I can
Um,
see right there your fabric collection.
yep. So that's her stash, and then over here,
Sewing area over there.
that's
Oh,
her
wow.
sewing area.
That's really nice.
Yeah, and this was just a desk that we found on
It's a dresser.
or
Actually.
dresser that we found on
Right.
Marketplace. And then I put a 4 foot by 6 foot butcher block countertop on top of it. And then
Lots of storage in it too. That's
yeah, and that was a big advantage. So over here in the corner, she's got her cutting table. We just put that design wall up and these lights. Her primary machine is a Husqvarna Viking, and
right.
go back around this way. We put in all of these top cabinets, and then these are all different sewing stations
Oh,
with
wow.
machines on them. So
How many machines do you have?
87, I believe.
You're joking.
I think someplace around 8 or 10.
Yeah, somewhere
Wow.
around.
And then on this side of the room over here is where we've
That's
got the long arm set up.
nice. I was sort of thinking you may have had your long arm in a different location, but it's nice you're able to get it right in the same room where you do all your patchwork.
Well, and ultimately, I think we're going to actually build another building and move the long arming stuff out to be separate from this. Because we're kind of getting to the point now where I'm looking at buying another machine so I can have two running at the same time.
Well, you guys are big into this, aren't you? Like, wow.
Yeah.
with
Go
it.
big or go
And,
home.
and I was going to say that you are so lucky you have a partner that is into this as much as you
I
are.
feel very blessed to have him. I mean, he has pushed me and kind of helped me along with my dream of things. I mean, it's awesome.
I have a feeling, Jim, that you are probably into more of the technology part of it.
He
Um,
is. He's like the
yeah,
brains of the
yeah.
the computer stuff. I'm computer illiterate. I have a hard time finding my email
Well,
sometimes.
to be honest, that's where me and her make such a great team is because she's very visual and I can build anything, but I can't see it.
Right.
So she figures out what she wants, and then I take that design and make it a reality for her.
Well, that makes a great team,
Yeah,
really.
it does.
Actually, I got into sewing in that because I love machines. And
Yeah.
that's and even with the long arm, it's the same thing, and computer
Yeah.
technology. I've always been into that kind of stuff. So yeah, but I also am a creative. So both worlds are in me. But my husband actually sews as well, but he's the one that pushed me to get the long arm. He doesn't quilt, he doesn't like quilting. He makes garments, he makes clothes and stuff
I
like
think
that.
those are like too hard for me. I don't know, too
Yeah,
complicated.
that's the way I look at it too.
I like fun stuff.
Yeah, he says quilting is too precise and too fiddly. There's too many pieces. So each to their own, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, I guess so.
Yeah. Well, going back to talking about the machines, the thing with a long arm is it's just a CNC machine. That's all it
Yeah,
is.
yeah,
And I mean, I've
exactly.
got the CNC plasma cutter out in the garage. So like the machine just makes sense to me.
We should do a separate video about that. The like that. Oh, yeah, that gets me all excited
Mhm.
about that. So before I go way off on a tangent, so do you have a favorite tool that you always reach for when you're doing your quilting?
Every day I have the cutting table that my husband built for me because being that I am single-handed, I used to sit on my floor with my rotary mat, my clear ruler, and my rotary cutter, and I would hold the ruler with my foot and I would cut all my pieces on the floor, and then I would get up and sew them all up and stuff. And he'd watched me,
I
unbeknownst to me, at the time, and
Shortly after she moved in, I watched her do that in her sewing room and I just went, that ain't happening. And
Now,
so
now this is a personal question, and you don't need to answer it, but you mentioned that you're using one hand for it. So,
I am an amputee from a
oh,
farming accident from a very young age. I was not quite 3 years old, and my parents were dairy farmers. My dad was mowing corn at the time, and my mom took a nap. So I escaped and went out into the field because the field where my dad was working on was right near our house. So I just wandered out in the field wanting my dad, and he didn't see me and he ran over me.
my goodness.
So this was a very traumatic thing for my
Yeah,
father.
I think
He doesn't ever really talk about it, but I feel at this point in my life I make him very proud.
yeah, yeah.
But
Well, I'm going to say now this is another dimension here. So you you're doing all of this work. Most of us, we're using two hands on it, and I'm just trying to imagine how you manage to make such beautiful quilts. And like you are a testament to the fact that nothing has to be a disability.
no, I mean, I've always been a very determined person. Even as a child, I always felt like I can do it. It might take me a little practice. I might have to do things a little bit differently, but I get it done to the best way I know how. And that's kind of why I wanted to put myself out there. I love YouTube and I love watching a lot of different people on there because they've taught me so much, but I feel like maybe I do have a little bit of a gift, with somebody that might be in my situation or
Yeah,
somebody else might be in another situation. And like, you can do anything that you put your mind to. And I feel like I'm so much more than sewing, but that is what my passion is all about.
yeah,
So
true. Well, I think it's an inspiration. If I mean, for people who aren't in the situation you're in, they take a look at what you've been able to do. They should be able to say, if she can do that with one, I got two. What's holding me back?
yeah.
Kind of a thing to it. So that's very, very, I think that's very inspirational as well. Now, I want to go back to your sewing machines because you've got quite a few sewing machines. Why? I kind of know the answer to this, but
That's my question.
I think it's an obsession and an addiction. I don't know. I've had the Janome and it's very simple. It was kind of limited on like some different stitches and things. So then I brought a brother and I loved that because it had the little tabletop on it and I used it until it died. And then I had tried to have Jim fix it and he couldn't fix it. And he told me to throw it away. Well, I hung on to it and I finally took it to a sewing machine repairman. He did fix it, but I don't feel like it's 100%, but it still sews. So I still have
right.
it. And then I have my sister's machine over here. We have a Singer embroidery machine, which I'm not really too fond of.
Yeah, don't buy a Singer Futura for an embroidery machine.
I wouldn't own another Singer. I mean, I don't think Singers are made like they used to. I have an
No,
old
I was going to say they're not what they were.
Yeah, I just not really Brothers, Genomes, Husqvarna Vikings. I've sewed on all those and I really love those machines. We do have a Brother Serger machine, which I enjoy that as well.
Yeah. So do you do any other kind of sewing besides quilting then? Because you mentioned you have a serger.
Well, the thing is, when people know that you sew, oh, can you hem my pants?
Yep.
I hate hemming, but I
Yes.
do it. I've hemmed curtains. I've done little alterations, although I tell people I don't know nothing about clothes. I can hem your pants, even though I don't like to do it. But so I do use that on like some hemming things or pillowcases. I like to make pillowcases. And instead of making a French seam, you can use the serger and then just kind of, reinforce it. So it has its good uses. I don't use it a whole lot, but it's nice to have when you do need it.
Yes.
So
Yeah, I have a serger as well. And actually I got mine because I want to make my own napkins.
Oh, okay.
There you go.
Yeah.
But I don't use it a lot either, but it's a handy tool to have,
It is. When you need something like that, it's been great. So
Yeah.
And
And as quilters, I think too, or even sewers, we do collect sewing machines because I have several. And embroidery machines, I have an embroidery machine. I have a Janome 550E. My husband has a serger, cover stitch, a Janome machine, and a Janome embroidery machine as well. So between the two of us, we've got probably about 10 machines in here. That's the
oh
same thing. And people say the same. That's why I asked you the question.
yeah.
Because when people ask me that, they say, why do you have so many machines? And I just answer, well, why not?
Yeah.
well,
Well,
and
I do have friends that come over weekly too, and they sew with me. So instead of her bringing her sewing machine, I said, you can
Yeah.
sit down on one of mine. And we have a lot of fun in here. Jim's mom comes over and sews with me, and we'll have like a little sewing party in here and we make things and stuff. So it's really a lot of fun.
Yeah. You can never have too many sewing machines.
Yeah, that's what I said. I mean, I like to, and I still like to sew on different ones. I like to do my machine binding on my little Janome machine, because I don't know, I love that machine, even though
Well,
I've had
they all have a different feel, don't they? And
yes, they do.
there's certain
But I
things.
forget on one, like that one's got automatic stuff, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Pedal, the presser foot drops down, and then when I get on the Janome, I'd start to sew, and I'm like, oh, and I got to manually put the presser foot
I
down.
knew the feeling because I have a Janome Skyline S7, which is the one I use as my travel machine. If I go to a retreat or I go to a class, right? But my main machine is a Continental M7. And although the two machines work similar ways, the buttons are in different places. So I go to do the needle down kind of thing, and I'm pushing like the foot up kind of button. And it takes me a while to get my mind
Yeah,
around
for our
that. So,
brains to adjust to
yeah.
which machine we're running because we're so used to running the favorite.
Exactly. So if you had all the money in the world, is there something you would, in terms of your quilting and everything, that you would want to invest in? I'm not sure if there's anything that you don't have, but
My first thing, if we had all the money in the world, my husband always says, I want an excavator. So we have to get that first.
Daddy needs a new excavator, you understand?
But if we really wanted something for this room, I would say I would want a nice embroidery machine
Yeah.
that would be user friendly, because like I said, I'm not the techie. He's the techie one, but yeah, I would like to dabble in a little bit embroidery, like for quilt labels or
Yes.
personalizing things, because mine is
that's why we got the embroidery machine, was to do that. But it's so to run that Singer Futura, you have to have a laptop. You have to do all the designs on the laptop. It has to be hooked up to the.
and it also
And
required
if you lose the disc for these Futura, you cannot use it. And Singer doesn't sell the discs anymore. You can't
Nope.
get.
That's the old
Yeah.
technology. that they used to use?
Yeah, the backstory on that is when we moved to the farmhouse, we lost the disc, and I couldn't believe that we lost it because I had the case but couldn't find the disc, and I'd searched through everything in here. I mean, I went through totes and all kinds of stuff, and I'm thinking, well, it's gone. And he just came in the house, was not even a month ago,
Yeah.
and said, "Guess what I found? You'll never believe." It was the disc to the Futura, and I'm like, "Well, where was it?" He's like, "It was in the garage," and I'm like, "How did it get out there?" So I don't know, maybe in the move, it might have
It,
got
Maybe.
shifted
yeah,
out or
it was
something.
sitting on top of a shelf that has been in the same spot since we moved here, and I have no idea how that disc got up there. But
Yeah,
I was
so
cleaning out the shop, and I'm like, huh.
There it is. Well, if you want to
yeah.
go down a rabbit hole with machine embroidery, they do so much more than just labels. I
Yeah.
do in the hoop projects. I've made complete quilts
Yeah.
in them, the whole bit. I love machine embroidery. I'm
Oh,
constantly doing something to them. So yeah, a lot of people will get an embroidery machine and think, well, I'll have it because I can monogram or put a name on a shirt or something like that. Oh no,
right.
you can do tote bags in
Oh
them.
yeah.
You
Yeah.
Well,
can
that's something
there's
maybe I
so
might have
much.
to explore in the future.
Like I
That's
said, it's a rabbit's hole. Once you go down it, it's a whole nother area, with and I do combine quilting with machine embroidery as well. But anyways, enough about me. We're back on you. Let's see. So have you ever belonged to any kind of groups, an in-person group like a guild or anything like that?
like 10 of them.
Oh
Yeah,
goodness.
several guilds. Since we've started the quilting business, I've gotten really involved in quilting guilds. And the great thing about guilds is meeting other people that sew and seeing their creations. And I love when people bring in their quilts to me. I did do we did a little bit of showcasing on people's quilts, although we got busy and we couldn't do it for a while, but we were just discussing we should get back into it because I see some of the most amazing stuff come in here that people have made, and it inspires me, and to think I like seeing other people's ideas, and what they
Yeah.
do, and even people that are new, I'm like, keep going. Every quilt deserves to be
Oh yeah.
quilted.
Yeah,
You know?
it does. You're very right about that because people have piles of UFOs and
Yeah,
they either don't want to quilt them themselves, they're going to quilt by check as they call it, or whatever, and they pile up and it gets frustrating. You have all these
yeah,
beautiful tops.
yeah. You put all this work
Yeah.
into it. Get it quilted. Start enjoying it. I mean,
Well, and we got a couple of quilt tops from what was that? Those old ones.
oh, they were like an antique thing.
Yeah, we found a couple of quilt shops. I don't know if it was an estate sale or what, but it was just the top and it wasn't finished. So we brought it home and quilted it and finished the
Actually,
quilt.
that's
And
what we did when we
Yep.
first got the gamble. I did a lot of practicing with my own quilts, and then I had some antique quilts that I'd gotten, and they weren't very big. And I'm thinking, I want to quilt these. I mean, somebody's put their time into it. They weren't perfect, but I
Right.
quilted them and binded them, and I put them downstairs on my quilt ladder. And I thought they'd be great porch lap quilts. When you're sitting out there on some evening and it's cool, I could throw one over me and enjoy
Yeah.
it. You
Yeah,
know?
really. And that's almost kind of sad thing because if you go to thrift stores or something like that, you will find
Oh yeah, I
unfinished
found
quilts
some
like
before.
quilt
Beautiful
tops
stuff.
because someone has probably passed away and nobody else in their family,
Nobody wants to take the time with it,
yeah,
and
or
I'm
has the
thinking, oh my
appreciation
gosh.
for what they are. So
yeah,
yeah, I haven't really explored that very much, but I think it's a great idea for learning how to do your quilting on a long arm or even on your domestic machine. I mean, you get these old things, and unless suddenly you came across one that looks like, oh, this one's worth something, kind of,
Right, right.
why not finish them off? If it's not perfect, they're probably not perfect. It'll be fine. Yeah. So I
yeah.
think
Right.
it's a great idea. I have to start doing that.
We did donate a couple quilt tops to the
To the Corning Museum.
yeah.
They have a
We
museum
we
down
found some
here.
old quilt tops and we took them down and donated them to the museum and they've got them kind of displayed down there now. So
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think they were pretty old, and I didn't want to
Yeah,
fuss
didn't
with
really
them.
what. Yeah, no, that's yeah. You got to be careful. If you have an appreciation for quilts, some people
yeah.
don't.
Yeah,
Yeah, if
It's just
if
an old
grandma made
blanket.
it, yeah, if
Yeah,
grandma made it, quilt it. If great grandma made it, take it to the museum.
yeah, yeah. Because
yeah,
it's
they were
probably an
hand
important
stitched
piece.
quilts.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's true. So, um, do you have any favorite experts or sources of information you'll turn to when you need to know something or you need inspiration, like on YouTube?
My favorite from YouTube, I should say, is the Lori Holt.
Oh yes.
I can relate so much to her for her being a farm girl. I'm obsessed with her books. I think I have every one of her books. I mean, since I found her, I made the quilts, and I've done a lot of the projects and stuff. I just love her, but I
She
do have some other
she
ones.
pre-orders the quilt or the books.
Yeah, I pre-ordered her last book and was so
Okay, so
excited.
you're definitely a diehard Lori Hart fan. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm definitely, and some of the other people that I like the So Yeah guys.
Yes. Yep.
They have some great projects. Erica Arndt, I watch hers from she has
That one
the
I'm not familiar with.
what is she? Confessions of a Homeschooler. She's kind of a regular girl. I mean, she has a lot of fun stuff. I like So Very Easy.
Mhm.
Laura
Yeah,
Koya.
Lori Koya. Yeah.
Yeah.
She's in my neck of the woods.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, love her. She's inspired me a lot when I first started really getting serious. I watched Jordan Fabrics, Missouri
Yes.
Star, The
Mhm.
Quilting Marine. So I can't even list some of the
Yep.
people that I love to watch. There are a lot of inspirational people out there that,
I
all
mean,
have
yeah.
Our
techniques and different ways.
YouTube recommendations are just sewing stuff at this point. Like that's it. YouTube
Mine
doesn't
anyway.
recommend anything
I
to us
sit
that's not related to
I
sewing
can sit
anymore.
all
Yeah.
day
Yeah.
and watch other people, and some of
I
the
do
things
the
they
same
do.
thing,
Because they inspire me.
Yes. Now, you mentioned Lori Holt as well. She is right now, to use a trendy term, she is on trend right now. She seems, I mean, she's been around for a while. She isn't a newbie to the whole industry,
Yeah, yeah.
but suddenly her popularity in the last year or two have just been going out the roof. It comes out of everybody's mouth. And you want to know something? I've never watched any of her videos and I've never done any of her projects. And now I'm hearing so much about it. I got to explore this further. And
Yeah, she's
because
very real, and very simple, I mean, she's not fancy. And I think that's what draws me to her, but I love her designs and the fun stuff that she does. She just has a lot of fun books
I'm
and things.
definitely going to explore her a little further now, see what all the hullabaloo is about. And you've got a little, I was gonna say, you've got, I saw him in when you went around, showed the room there, you got a little furry helper
Yeah.
in your quilt room.
I have two little schnauzers, and then we have a pit bull mix in here. And the thing is, we're in this room, I have to have little doggy beds all over the floor because they all have to be in here.
Oh
Even the
yeah.
cat. I have a cat too, and he hangs out in here and sometimes gets in the pictures. And
He'll make cameo appearances in some of our videos.
yeah,
Yeah, well, I actually I love that. And you say you have a cat too. Cats love quilts. They love to just lay on your quilts.
oh, he likes to get on the quilter. I come in here one morning and caught him on there, and I'm like, oh my god, what are you doing on there? I was like, you can't lay on that, somebody's quilt, getting cat hair all over it, or he kind of sinked it in a little bit. So I have to lock him out of here when we have a quilt on the quilter because
Yep, yep, they love it.
yeah.
Sure. I did have a cat, but I had the cat before I started quilting, and she's passed away well, back about 8 years ago or so. And still, and I think that she would have loved it if I'd been quilting then. Well, I know she would have. She just would have been like the same thing. The long arm, oh yeah, she'd be living on it. Uh, that so that takes me to let's talk about your YouTube channel. First of all, how long have you had it, and why did you start it?
I think I've been on for 2 years now. Yeah,
Year and some change, yeah.
I think it was 2 years.
I
I did
believe
the
you.
first year in review the summer before, so last summer would have been this
Oh yeah,
2 year
okay,
mark.
yep,
So
yep,
yeah,
you're right. Yep.
it's been about 2 years.
So
Why
why
did I
did you
start
start it?
it?
Yeah.
I guess because so inspired with other people because I'm such a fan of YouTube and watching other people, and I'm thought, I'd like to share a few of my ideas. So I started it off just for fun. But when I started it, I didn't really know how to start it, and I was kind of
We still
scared
don't.
and nervous. And he did some practice runs with me in front of the camera, and I'm like, this is harder than it seems. You stutter and you mess up, and I'm like, all right, erase that and start over. I've come to know that I'm not the only one, but
So her first video was going to be just her introducing herself and that kind of stuff, but she couldn't get through it. So what we ended up doing was I sat down with her on the couch and kind of did like an interview with her to just ask her
Good
questions,
idea.
prompt her to do stuff, and
to kind of
yeah, that was the
I
first
didn't know
video.
how to introduce myself or really get people to know me. I have a hard time talking about myself and what,
Right.
I'm
Yeah, I
just a
know.
regular girl, and I'm out there. I mean, people can ask me anything. I mean, don't be afraid to ask me something because I'm not afraid to answer. I'm very comfortable with who I am. I just have a hard time, I guess, opening up to. I mean, I've done a lot better along the way in the past 2 years. I've even looked back on some of my older videos and I'm thinking I'm how quiet and reserved I am. And now I feel like I can more let my personality out.
We're gonna
Just
do a bloopers reel at some point.
They're always fun. But like it's like learning to quilt. YouTube's another technology.
yeah, yeah.
And
It's harder than it looks.
yeah, it is. It is. And you can go down a rabbit hole with it too, with editing and all those things. I mean, you see some people's videos, they have little words come up, little graphics, they have this, they have that. I
Have
mean,
all that stuff. It's to me that's I don't know.
I need in my quilting time to do
Yeah,
that.
I try
Yeah.
not to edit mine either, unless we have to like stitch some together. I just
Yeah.
don't, I don't know. I just want to be myself and not
Well,
try to
I
somebody
think
else.
that's the strength of your YouTube channel and why it has appeal, because you are being yourself. You are the people will see, yeah, everything isn't absolutely perfect on here.
Right,
And I think
right.
people appreciate that more than the really polished, smooth ones, because you learn from that, as you
Yeah, yeah.
and
And
you
you're
think,
real.
yeah, you're
That's the
real.
big thing for me is being real. I mean, I
Yeah.
don't want to be somebody I'm not or portray somebody that I'm not. I am who I am. I'm all out
Yeah.
there.
Yeah,
So
and I
But
think that's the thing about YouTube, and I think that's what makes a channel really appealing is the one-on-one element. Like when people watch you, they can relate to you. They're not watching a highly polished, performance piece, okay?
yeah,
Because
yeah.
that distances people from it. And they want to see a real person doing real things, making, real, you know, mistakes, whatever, and how they recover from it.
if somebody wants to watch perfect instructions, they could just open the instruction manual and read it.
Exactly. Yeah,
So
Yeah.
that's true. So, I will put in the show notes for this interview, I will put the link, of course, to your YouTube channel. Do you use the YouTube channel as part of your business?
um to an extent, we do mail-in quilts for people, so they'll watch the channel and they'll mail us some quilts. That part hasn't really taken off a lot. We're still doing a lot of local quilts right now, but
But we have
ultimately,
had some mail-in
yeah, we
quilts.
we want to get more into the mail-in realm because it just honestly is more customer based for us, is what it boils down
Yeah,
to.
yeah, true. With that, so do you have any challenges or goals for yourself in the next year or two that you want to get to?
I got to build a new chicken coop.
Oh, okay. Okay, I want to ask you just before we go on with that then. So you are living on a working farm.
No, it's
It's
a hobby.
yeah, I was gonna say it's more of a
Oh,
hobby
okay.
farm. This
Yeah,
is a real
we've got
authentic farmhouse.
we've got chickens, we've got a goat.
We did
But
have
they're
ducks,
no,
but
don't get ducks. Oh my God, don't get ducks.
we didn't really have the space for them that they need water or a pond or something. We don't have that here, but I do enjoy the chickens and I love our goat and he's been on a couple of videos. He's quite the ham.
So that's really interesting. That so obviously that's where you got the name Country Farmhouse for your YouTube channel.
Yep.
Yes.
Well, from it. Well, I think that's kind of cool. As well. So, do you have any other goals or anything that like we kind of went off on a tangent here? I want to come back to that. Things that you want to accomplish or try.
I definitely like to grow. I mean, to
Yeah.
grow in the quilting business. I mean, like Jim said, maybe build a shop with, more machines and get more people interested. I try to inspire as many people as I can to start sewing and
I'd love to have the space to do quilting classes.
Mm,
yeah,
Get
to be a
15,
teacher.
20 people together and over the course of maybe 2 months or so, once a week we meet and at the end of it you finish the quilt.
yeah, that would be really fun. I think to have something like that. A lot of work, but
Yeah.
Yeah,
a lot
but
of
it's
fun
it's
too.
so much fun along the way. You got to enjoy the journey of it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that's always a danger going again back to why you get a long arm and people think you're going to start a business. You know, when you start doing things for other people that they're paying you to do, besides the pressure on all of that, it takes the fun, I think, out of something like that. And I think why most of us get into it is for fun. But you're shaking your head no about that, Jim.
I don't think so, because to be honest, so on the board back here, or on the rack back here, I hang every single quilt up that we get in, and I look at every one of them, and on a weekly basis, I go, oh my God, I love that.
Yeah.
And it's you kind of, I
see the
enjoy the
beauty
long arming
in
by
every
looking at
quilt.
other people's work and what they did, and I can really appreciate what they put into it. And then it drives both of us. Like if they give us a quilt and it's quilter's choice on design and thread color,
Oh, we have fun with that.
yeah, there's sometimes that we'll spend an hour looking at that quilt and patterns and
And
colors
trying to
and
figure out
trying
what
to find the
speaks to you.
perfect pattern for it.
Mhm.
Well, you
And then
just
pray that the customer thinks so too.
you just sort of blew my theory out the window on that, because you're still getting joy out of doing this for other people. So for you, it's not a business, it's still fun. And I guess that's
Yeah,
the thing that I
you
fear, that
enjoy
it
it.
would be, now I have an obligation. I've got to make this perfect. And I would feel
There,
that I wasn't having fun.
there is an obligation and there is pressure to make sure that, nothing happens to that quilt and everything goes down nice. But uh, the more quilts that we do, the more comfortable we feel with it. And,
Right.
we've dealt with this issue already on 5 quilts before. So we kind of know, okay, this is what we're going to have to do with this one.
You know,
No, I love every quilt we get.
And the people that bring
And
them in too, we
yeah,
talk to these women, that
and
bring in
get the
their quilts.
stories for the
Yeah,
quilts.
who's it for? I
Oh my
mean,
God.
and what inspired them to make it, and just learn a little bit, meeting
Yep.
people, we're
We
sharing passion together. So it's really fun.
yeah,
we've
well, I
got
could
a
tell that
yeah,
you
we've got a
have a
lady.
passion.
Yeah, we got a lady that sends us quilts that she makes for the nursing home. Where is she?
I think she's in Iowa.
Iowa. So she sends us, 4 or 5 quilts at a time to quilt. And it's awesome because like she tells us who the quilt is for, and
Oh, okay.
so it's just kind of like, I don't know. And we do some quilts for Quilts of Valor too. I'm a vet, so that kind of holds a place in my heart. But
Right.
yeah,
Right. And I guess when you hear these stories and you spend this time looking at somebody else's creation, I am sure that sort of, well, it probably dictates your final decision and exactly how you're going to quilt it. And I
yeah,
think that makes it a more personal experience. So yeah, I can see the joy that comes out of it. And I can see both of you have a lot of joy for this and a lot of passion for it as well. So do you have any advice for anyone who wants to get started into quilting?
into the long arming or into the piecing.
Just into the just as beginner quilter, so it'll be the piecing probably.
Quilter. It can be an addiction. It's fun to go and pick out fabrics and colors and get excited, and because there is so many ideas and so many designs and so many people out there, that can help them
Yes.
along the way. I mean, I started out pretty much self-teaching myself, but I can't really say that I'd self-taught myself because I went on with other people that I followed on YouTube. I mean, they've all been great teachers to me. I have learned so much about seam allowance and bias and cutting and different things and different tools. And oh my God, the wealth of information. And that's what I tell a lot of people. I was like, if you want to learn anything, YouTube is your friend. I was like, because there's so many people out there that will share that passion with you and teach you a lot of different things. And you got to follow your heart to, you know, what's best for you and what works for you.
So what I'm hearing then is, if you're going to get started in this, go out and explore what's already there, and YouTube is your best source. I agree with you for that kind
Yeah.
of thing.
Yeah.
And if you're just getting started, don't worry about going out and buying that $1,500
Yeah, you,
Bernina.
you don't need the
Don't
best
go out and
things to
buy
get started.
all of the tools. You can get started with just a basic sewing machine and a pair of scissors. You can build a quilt with those 2 things.
Yeah, that's very
So,
true. I think that a lot of people thinking about getting into quilting, then they look at the equipment and they start pricing it and they go, oh, I can't afford that.
oh
But
yeah.
Right,
start
right. Yeah.
simple.
Yeah.
Start with
You
what
can,
you have in
you
your
can buy
house.
a simple used sewing machine. I mean, I started out with a Singer simple sewing machine. I went to thrift stores and bought my fabrics, or if
Yep.
people gave me fabrics, and I just played. I mean,
Right.
I accumulated things over time, and I look around now at myself today. I mean, in the journey where I've come from, sewing on a dining room table and having all my stuff in a spare bedroom and
Yeah.
stored in a closet. I mean, I feel very blessed to where I'm at now, you know, and to have all that I have. It didn't happen overnight. It took a lot of time
True.
to get where you are.
And what I'm also hearing you say then for a beginner or someone coming into this is basically just have some fun with it.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
know,
Play
like,
with it, you know,
yeah,
I mean,
yeah. It's
If
see
you're
not
not
like,
how
having fun,
see where it
stop.
goes. I
yeah,
mean,
exactly. I agree with that totally. If you're not having fun, stop. Do something else.
I mean, I
Because
Yep.
this
told
is
my
a great.
friend to start when she wanted to first start sewing. I started her off with a simple little coaster or a pot holder. You know, I mean, you can have such fun with just a little project, and you know when you finish it, you get excited and like, okay, what else can I do? You know, I mean, that's
Exactly.
you
It
know how I
builds.
got. You know, I got bored with one thing. My mom showed me how to make totes, and I'm like, okay, I've made enough of these. I need something more
Move
challenging.
on.
So
Yep. Yep. That's how it happens.
yeah.
So, just before we finish up here, then, do you have anything else you'd like to say about any of this?
I think this has been a great experience. I mean, just, you know, opening up about, you know, who we are and what we do and what I do. And, you
Well, I
know, I
think it is
appreciate
too.
anybody.
And I'm really happy you agreed to do this interview. This has been fantastic.
It
And
has.
everything. And I find your whole setup. Thank you for showing us that room and everything and what you were talking about with the long arm. And I especially like, I think this is the first interview I've done where I've had a team, husband and wife, with it.
We are a
Yeah,
team.
we are very much a
And
team.
you can tell. And I think you're very lucky that you have each other for this because that you're just multiplying by twofold or more ideas, creative inspiration, the whole bit. You play off each other's strengths. I think that's wonderful in that.
Yeah.
I wish more people
She
would.
makes me look good.
We're in this together.
You're in it together, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you're both looking good. So
Thank you.
thank you again for this. Just stay on the line. But this interview will go up in a few days. We'll talk about when that's going to happen. And in the show notes below, there will be a link, of course, to your YouTube channel. I encourage anybody who's seen the interview to check it out and support your YouTube channel. Let's build the subscribers because you need to be known. And this is the way it goes. So again,
Oh,
thank
awesome.
you so much, both of you, for this interview, and I'll let you get on with the rest of your day. Just
All
stay
right.
on the line.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye bye.